Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode 37. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you decide to listen to the Empowered Podcast. Today is Wednesday morning, and as I normally do or have for the last 6 or 7 months, I am releasing a new podcast. And the reason why I'm talking about it today is I'm going to do something that I've never done before on the podcast, but I'm taking a note from my YouTube channel where for the last couple weeks, I've kind of recorded behind-the-scenes videos for the podcast that I was doing. The first one was when I interviewed Chris Cerrone of The Cerrone Show. The second one was with Amy Schmidauer, who does Savvy Sexy Social, and who's just launched her own podcast. And I did video recording, did audio and everything, and put some behind-the-scenes videos up. And people seem to really like those. If you are interested in seeing what those look like, I'm going to find that page on my site real quick. So if you hear some behind the scenes clicking and all that stuff, that's just because I'm going to try to do as little editing as possible. So if you're out there, maybe you haven't started your podcast, you listen to my show and it comes together all nice and neat at the end. Well, there's definitely some rough spots. I want to show you that today, but we do have a message. Today I want to talk to you about some of the mistakes that I made when I first started out on my entrepreneur journey. Some of them are pretty big. A couple might be pretty small. I think they're all kind of big, but anyway, maybe that'll inspire you or motivate you to get going and say, everybody's not perfect. We all stumble along the way, and hopefully it will help you get going. But if you go to, like I just mentioned, if you go to ElleryWells.com/watch, like you're going to watch TV or you wear a watch on your wrist, you can see the behind-the-scenes videos. There's a couple other things. But now up on the menu on my site, I have a read, watch, listen section. So read the podcast, watch behind-the-scenes videos, tutorial videos, any sort of visual media that I put out there. And, of course, listen. You've got the Empowered Podcast, and you've got the episodes that I did for the Choose Yourself podcast. Anyway, they're all up there, and you might want to check that out. But today, I want to talk about the mistakes that I made as a brand new entrepreneur. I think they're relevant because I've seen other people doing the same things, and maybe if you're going through one of these things right now, it may help you realize it's not the end of the world. But each week I talk to people just like you, just like me, who are trying to do this thing online. We're trying to build a brand for ourselves, build a business, and make it successful, either if we want to do it on the side or we want to just become full-time entrepreneurs. Either way, we're trying to do this thing. But if you're like me, when you first start out, you aren't, well, even now, I still have these issues. You aren't sure what to do. You don't know necessarily how to do it. Or if you've taken a few steps down the way, you're not even sure you'll be able to make it work, next week or tomorrow. And as a very analytical person, I've talked about some of my strengths on other episodes, but analytical is one of my 5 strengths. And so I notice details. I have an eye for details. Sometimes it's a curse. Sometimes it's a blessing. But I've started noticing these common mistakes people make during this beginning process. And again, if I can help you avoid some of those or give you some sort of comfort if you're going through them right now, if I can do that, if I can help you some way, then I've served my purpose. Now, I'm recording this on a Wednesday morning. I love coffee. I just made me a cup, so if you hear me drinking that coffee, if you guys heard that episode from Cliff Ravenscraft where he didn't do any music or anything like that a few weeks ago, I liked that episode. It was kind of cool and refreshing. So if you hear me take a drink of this coffee, just like I'm about to do, don't freak out. It's delicious coffee, and it makes me part of who I am. Anyway, all right. Anyway, so over the last few years, I have learned a lot about entrepreneurship, a lot of mistakes that I've made myself, a lot of books that I've been reading. I've attended seminars and conferences, and I'm in 2 masterminds. I've started a business, and I do a lot of watching of Shark Tank. And by the way, Mark Cuban is my favorite. I loved the episode a few weeks ago. Well, yeah, it was actually, we're almost caught up to live now. We've been recording them, where it was kind of a behind the scenes, and they asked the sharks what they thought of all the other sharks, and I think Robert says Mark has more money than all of the other sharks combined. And he's like, yeah, he's a billionaire with a B. And I love how Mark just comes in and he'll wait for everybody to just show their hands, and he'll come in and he will make the deal. Or what's actually the coolest part is he has such incredible vision, and he's got ideas across so many businesses that he can see an aspect of a company that will scale like none of the other ones can see. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why he's my favorite. I'm not a basketball fan, but if I was, I would watch the Mavericks, and of course he owns the Mavericks. Anyway, I've also spent a lot of time speaking and coaching to people who want to strike out on their own and start their own business. That's why I'm starting my course. If you go to ElleryWells.com/expertise, you can check more out about this course, and that's why I'm starting it, but to help people start a business and stake their claim for this digital world that we're in. And while I didn't consider all of these things research at the time, looking back, I can kind of realize and I can see that I've been taking these mental notes, and of course I lived every single one of these mistakes that new entrepreneurs make. They're all based on my life. So I can't say, oh, you guys are doing it wrong, or I would have done it differently because I stumbled along and fumbled along and figured it out on my own. And if I can, I know that you can too. And the things that we're going to talk about today, they're really meant to give you, again, warning signs of these common roadblocks where people get stuck. I see it in myself. I see it in other people. And I want to help you move quicker than I did. So the number one, or not, they're not in any order, but the very first mistake that new entrepreneurs make is they don't have any sort of infrastructure. They don't have any sort of backbone's not the right word that I want to use because that makes whatever. I'm just talking about as far as the business goes. Now, I'm going to show you the 4 things, or talk about 4 things that you have to make up a business, and one of those things is a website, and that would essentially be part of this infrastructure, but it also means a couple other things, and we'll go right into those. When I first started marketing my coaching services, I didn't realize everything that I had to do once I got interest from my first client. I was talking to somebody on my podcast just Monday night. Her name's Kelly. She does voiceovers. You're going to have to check out that episode. But her first client came to her. My first client came to me. Cynthia Sanchez's first client came to her. And I don't know if it's a trend or not, but it's interesting because Cliff Ravenscraft told me one time, be so good that people can't ignore you. Or be so good that people want to pay you for your information and your expertise. And I found that interesting because I just gave you 3 examples of where entrepreneurs had their first clients come to them. And I think that's, on one hand, encouraging because you don't have to go and cold call or anything like that, but also it's discouraging if you haven't had somebody come to you yet. And I don't think that's the only way to do it. However, if you're putting out really high quality work, high quality blog posts or podcasts or paintings or pictures, and you're good enough, people will ask you how they can pay for your stuff. I've seen it. I've asked people how I can buy their products, and that's the tip there that I would give you is be so good that people can't ignore you and that they want to give you money. But whenever I got my first coaching client, I had to create an outline for the sessions, how I'm going to take her from where she is today to where she is, 4 months down the road when we're done, when we've completed our coaching. I had to figure that out. I had to figure out a payment method, and if they couldn't pay a lump sum, how could we do a payment schedule? And there's a few other things there. And that's what I'm talking about as infrastructure. Now, don't wait until you have the infrastructure to start doing anything. That would be the very worst mistake that you could possibly make. But if you can be okay with and get comfortable with figuring out things along the road or along the way as you're moving forward, you're going to be 10 miles further than someone who says, I've got to get the infrastructure up first. So with that caveat, Make sure you're putting one foot in front of the other, doing something on a daily basis. You can figure it out later, but you do have to have some of these things in place. When you decide on what you're going to do for your business, don't waste your time worrying about all of these technical things until people people are interested. If you've read, I don't know exactly where this term came from. I don't know if it was in 4-Hour Workweek or not, but it's called the minimum viable product. You can put product, and I'm going to teach about this in my course too, is you can put out a product, pre-sell it, if you will. Pre-sell the idea, the concept, and if you get people registering for it or buying it or pre-ordering it, we do it for video games and movies. You go and you get your tickets ahead of time. Those people are just pre-selling it and doing somewhat of a proof of concept. So you can do those kinds of things to see if there is interest before putting in hours and hours and hours of work, or days or weeks of work too, for that matter. However, but realize people are going to pay you real money whenever you open your consulting business, or your coaching business, or you're selling ebooks, whatever, or even if you're selling music. People are going to pay real money, and they want to get real value out of that money that they are paying. If you bought a $10 CD or whatever, and it showed up, and there's actually only 2 songs on it, and those 2 are kind of backroom produced, and they're not really good, you're gonna be pretty upset. And people work hard for their money, they really do. And if they're gonna give it to you as a coach, or as someone who, I had to adjust my microphone, or to someone as a coach, or someone they're buying an ebook from, or a course, or a guide from, they really want to get their money's worth. And as the creators of that content, you and I have to really over deliver, and it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure for me then, it's a lot of pressure for me now, but you and I, if we're going to be successful, we have to step up to the plate and deliver. And you shouldn't get bogged down in the details, and you don't need to have all of the infrastructure in place to start bringing in clients and providing value to those clients while they are there. But you do need to have an infrastructure that will scale with your success. If you're selling ebooks, sometimes if you're paying fees or something to a third-party company, they can add up. Again, in my training course, Turn Your Offline Expertise into an Online Business, it's all about scaling and what tools will help you be successful with 10 sales, 100 sales, or 1,000 sales. And again, I'll show you how to do that. But here are the building blocks, or the 4 things that you need to have a business, like I mentioned before. Coffee break. The first one is a website. The second is a customer with a need. The third is a product or service that meets that need. And the fourth thing is a way to get paid. Now, if you went to business school, you could probably boil it down to 3, or there might be 7 or whatever. I didn't go to business school. I walked into my first class at Baylor of business school, and they said, don't lie, cheat, or steal, or do business with those that do. And I said, I got it. Cool, I'm out. And I got a degree in psychology instead. But if you've never heard those things, basically you could boil it down to 3: a customer need, a product or service that meets that need, and a way to get paid. You could start a business without a website, but come on, it's 2014. We've had the internet for like 20 years. Government's had it for 30 years, whatever. But it's 2014. Why would you want to start a business without a website? So those are the 4 things: website, customer with a need, product or service that meets that need, and a way to get paid. And no, having an Etsy store does not count. You can't say, go to etsy.com/Ellery/032. It doesn't count. Etsy stores do not count. Sorry, Etsy guys, but it doesn't. You need your home. You need your home base. The second mistake that I made as an entrepreneur, and you might be making as well, is expectations of automatic expertise. As we progress through life, we have to crawl before we walk. We have to walk before we run. But after a while, and we've been running for a while, we need to share our knowledge with the younger generation, with other people who are behind us. And it doesn't necessarily mean people who are literally younger. If you're 30, you don't have to find somebody who's 29 or younger. Just people who have been doing it a shorter amount of time than you. And that's what's really cool about leadership and some of these things that we talk about on the podcast and I write about on the blog, is you don't have to be at the end. You don't have to be across the finish line or at your definition of success in order to turn around and lead somebody or help them with your advice. You just have to be a couple steps further along the road. And that's what's really cool and really encouraging to me, because I haven't, become successful. I haven't achieved my definition of success, and I haven't crossed the finish line yet. Anyway, over time, through months, if not years of study, we become these experts. And again, we have this expectation of becoming an automatic expert. One thing that I see in myself, and I've seen it with other people, is when we change course to become entrepreneurs, we expect to become these automatic experts because we were at the top of our game over here. Can't see me, but I'm waving my hand over here. If we're at the top of our game over here, we plan on being at the top of our game over there. I guess it should be reversed. If we're on the top of our game over there, we expect it to be at the top of our game over here. And we forget that instead of changing our position in the game, we've completely changed the game. We're playing a different sport. Or we've gone from chess to checkers or something. Because while some of our skills might transfer from one area to another, I wrote a blog post about how writing can make you a better speaker, but a lot of our skills don't transfer. And that's okay, but you might have to go through a building and development and acquiring skills and knowledge phase again. And that's where you have to decide, hey, is this entrepreneur thing what I really want to do? I've got to essentially or potentially start over, and my expertise at whatever I was doesn't carry over. I spent 15 years in sales. I had a very successful sales career at a large, huge IT company. I had more awards than anybody in my entire department. And when I left that job in January, now most of those skills transfer, but instead of being at the top of my game, now I'm not so good at social media. I don't know how. I started noticing all the things that I'm not good at. I'll just leave it at that. We don't have to talk about all the shortfalls that I've discovered about myself over the last 4 months. But the problem is when you get so discouraged by your expertise that doesn't carry over, you forget the skills and the talents that do. And worse yet, the worst possible scenario with this is when you never do what you love for fear of starting over at the beginning. And the psychology person in me wants to say that may come down to ego. You don't want to go from the top to being at the bottom. You don't want to go from being close to the finish line to the beginning of the race again. But if you're worried about starting at the beginning, it's okay. It is. It's not going to be the end of the world, and there will be people like me there to help you. Just don't worry about your expectations of this automatic expertise and worry that they all won't carry over. The third thing, coffee break. The third thing is assuming the skills are the same with what you're going to be doing for your new thing as they were doing your old thing. I learned the hard way that just because I'd been on Facebook for years as myself as a person, Ellery, I didn't have the social media skills at all to do social media for a business. And I'm just laughing at myself because I thought, hey, I know how to. I wasn't even on Twitter when I started this thing, but I've got Facebook friends. I've been, posting on Facebook. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Anybody who tells you that it does is probably not being honest with you, because the skills are very Very different when you're doing it just you're sending tweets as yourself versus when you're trying to promote content. And while your personality should shine through, there is a big difference between being social as a person and being social as a business. And I don't have a whole lot to offer on this one because I feel like it's a big gap for me. I do my best, and I'm probably better than some people, but I know I'm worse than a lot of people. However, if you are interested in a great advice book or tips book or examples book, I would highly recommend Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. And actually, I still have a few copies of that to give away. So if you want to hit me up for that book, they are the physical book. They're not a digital one. That big, heavy, nice hardback. I'll mail it to you. So I'll make that deal with you guys right now. The first 2 people to, let's see, I'll think of a way for you to earn that here in a second. If you share the podcast, tag me on Twitter or on Facebook. If you just share it with somebody and put in something about the book Jab, 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 Right Hook, I got to see it. I'll enter you to win a copy. How's that sound? It's a great book, by the way. I loved it. I highlighted the crap out of it. But I have 2 copies. I have 3, but one's mine, and it's got all my notes and everything in it. So I've got 2 copies to give away, and I'll do that for you right now. So if you're listening to that, just share this episode. If you go to empoweredpodcast.com/37 and share the post from there, you enter to win a copy of the book. The fourth thing that the new entrepreneurs make as mistakes, and that I did for myself, or mistakes I made for myself, is worrying about not hitting your stride. You know, when you get in a routine, you're just chugging along in your career, and then my wife makes that sound really well. You put on the brakes and you redirect to something else. Your stride, your routine gets interrupted. And when I started blogging, I had this grand vision of becoming an overnight success. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I didn't realize how much time and effort it takes to be a good writer. Now, if you're not a good writer, publish it anyway. If you are a good writer, it's not enough. But through the help of Jeff Goins, I went through part of his Tribe Writers course. I still have not finished it all yet, but it took me over a year of blogging, going through his course, and I made a lot of changes, and I wrote about them in a blog post called Why I Wasted 15 Months. It was pretty successful, but I started putting my personality into things. And while sharing my story with hundreds of people over the last couple of years, I've always had to share this same information with them. So I'm going to give you the same information that I've given to hundreds of people. It took me over 80 blog posts, some of them very long, some of them over 1,000 words, 1,800 words, things like that. It took me over 80 blog posts on my site before I felt like I really hit my stride, and before writing felt like it wasn't a chore. So actually, last week I talked to someone who was saying, I'm thinking about giving up the blog and focusing on something else because writing, it's not as fun for me as it used to be. I think she might have used, or he, I don't even remember who it was, might have used the word chore as well. So if you feel like writing and blogging is a chore, find comfort in it. That's just growing pains. It's like going to the gym every day and starting a new exercise. It's gonna be rough for a while, and it's not gonna be completely fun. But now I really, really enjoy writing now, and so maybe you're in that position as well. Whatever new journey you're about to set out on, remember it might be a while before you hit your stride. Also, and kind of tying in with the automatic expertise part. But don't get discouraged because you aren't an automatic expert, or you have to put in the extra work before feeling comfortable with doing what you're doing. Again, it's just kind of growing pains. Don't quit just because it's harder than you imagined it would be. And to throw another blog post that I wrote out there. Again, I blog about my life, so hopefully it's relevant for you. But if you feel like quitting, check out a blog post that I wrote called What Keeps Me Going and Keep You Going Too. And I'll put that in the show notes for you. The fifth thing that I kind of suffered with building my business is I forgot to be myself. Forgetting to be yourself is the number 5 thing. And to quote the Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Coffee break there. I think there might have been a first lady who said something similar, but when I did my research, everyone was attributing that exact quote to Oscar Wilde, so that's what we'll go with. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Hopefully, you like your personality. If you don't, newsflash, you can change it. But don't change your personality to make somebody else happy. Don't change it to get ahead at business. Sure, you might have to make some tweaks. You might have to make some adjustments. I know I have. I'm very sarcastic. And most people don't get my humor. I'm rarely in a bad mood, but some people think I'm always in a bad mood just because I'm very deadpan, and I've had to curb that deadpanness, if you will, to help me get ahead, to make more friends, to seem more friendly, things like that. But don't change your personality, but you might have to tweak it. People are very tired of doing business with and working for these giant, faceless concrete and steel companies. I don't know anyone at all levels of the last company that I worked for, anyone all over, from first-line salespeople to managers, who just loved the fact that they worked for a giant corporation. They might have liked the pay, they might have liked who they worked with, you might even like the products, but no one says, "Oh, I love being just another rep number." And that's why I think boutique businesses are popping up all over the place and thriving, because they offer a very unique way to do business. You know, boutique business being something that's very niche, not huge and corporate. Cities like Austin, Denver, San Francisco, San Diego, I'm sure there are more, but anywhere there's a thriving food truck community, those are booming because of the personality people are bringing to their businesses. And I think that's really cool. I don't usually eat at food trucks. I did in college once. I got some pizza, and it tasted really good, but it was like 2:30 in the morning. But food trucks it's very personality based. If you watch Shark Tank, some of the entrepreneurs come on, and there's the guys that wanted to do like the lobster food truck, and they're doing really well. But my point there is it's based on a personality. And I think you and I can learn a lot from the success that those types of niche, boutique, food truck type businesses are bringing, and really let our personalities shine. When I started putting more of my personality, more of my life and things into my blog, my traffic went up 300%. There, I have blog posts about it. I have screenshots of my Google Analytics if you don't believe me, but my traffic literally went up 300% when I started putting my personality into my blog posts, really writing with my voice. And then when I started doing some of the things that Gary talked about in his Right Hook book, it went up another 300%. I went from about 125 visitors a month to 1,000. And I think this month I'm at about 1,200. So I'm not a huge audience, or I don't have, this huge platform, but it went up 300%, and then another 300% when I started doing some of these social things and was myself, learned how to improve my skills and things like that. When I interviewed Amy Schmidauer, just mentioned her a second ago, I couldn't help but notice how much character and her personality she puts into her work. And she does YouTube videos, and she's got a huge channel and all that stuff. But she has built an awesome business because she doesn't hide who she is. And that's a struggle for me. So if it's a struggle for you, You and I, friend, are in the same boat. When I interviewed Kelly Lanning, which you'll hear about in a few weeks, when I interviewed Kelly on Monday, she and I both agreed that putting our personality out there is a lot of work. So there's two entrepreneurs that agree that putting your personality into your work takes effort at the beginning, and if you are facing that same amount of effort, join the club. Then the sixth thing, oh man, I struggled with this for 2 years. It's part of my story, and I'm not necessarily ashamed of it. But once I fixed this one, everything seemed to align and seemed to come together, and these crazy random activities came together with a purpose. So this number six thing is coffee break. How's that for a cliffhanger? This is the number 6 thing, is no defined mission. I see this happening with myself for 2 years. I see it with other entrepreneurs. And here's the thing. Entrepreneurs with a product can succeed. Entrepreneurs with a product and a purpose will absolutely dominate. And that's kind of the phase that I've only just recently come into, is finding a purpose, and a purpose that ties all of my products, all the things that I've been working on for the last couple of years. It ties them together, and it's really pretty cool. To be honest, it took me 2 years of daily effort, blogging several times a week, podcasting once a week for the last 6 months. It took me all kinds of effort to find my purpose and my mission. I had several projects, What's Next Blogging. They sponsor the show often. I've written a couple ebooks about starting a podcast for $200 or less. And by the way, you can find all of this on my store, on ellerywells.com/products, or you can go to the store tab. But I've got an ebook on personal branding. I've got an ebook on starting a podcast for $200 or less, which is fantastic. Just, by the way, just throwing that out there, it is fantastic. What's the other one? I've got a productivity guide that just shows you how to manage your calendar and some of those things, how to build a personal cloud so that you can work from anywhere. And I've got all of these projects, but they seemed very random until I found my purpose and I defined my mission. And it wasn't until I gained clarity of purpose that everything started to come together. And again, it took me 2 years of daily effort. If you haven't clearly defined your purpose in life, your mission for your business, do not worry, because it'll come. You've got to put that defining moment for you. It just might be down the path, and you got to take 1,000 steps before you get there. So don't worry, but you will. My mission is to remove the technological and financial roadblocks that are preventing you from taking back control of your life and starting your life of purpose, and to help you put yourself back into the driver's seat and really become the master of your own destiny. That's my mission, and that's what I want to help you do. Once I define my mission in life, things that, again, seem to be very random, all these weird and crazy projects, and some might call them distractions. I did. I had a lot of doubt about those, and so I thought they might be distractions. But once I defined my mission, again, they really, really fell into place. Everything that I'd been working on for the last 2 years came together. They aligned and made sense when I received the clarity that comes with defining my mission. So again, lastly, don't be discouraged if you don't yet know your purpose. It's a monumental task. But here's a question for you that will help you figure out what your mission is. What do you want to be known for? If you're driving, ignore this next piece of advice. But if you're sitting at a desk or something, write this down and stare at it until you answer the question. What do you want to be known for? And again, if you don't have your definition of purpose, or your defined mission and purpose, as we mentioned on the very first part about the infrastructure, don't wait until you find it before taking action. That would be awful. because if you wait until you find it, it's still. You remember I said just a second ago, your defining moment could be 1,000 steps away. If you're waiting until you find it, guess what you're not doing? You're not taking those 1,000 steps. So make sure you put one foot in front of another and act, and your mission will reveal itself. Just know it may take time and effort, but when you do find it and you do define your mission, you'll have more energy and more drive than you've ever had before, and it's pretty awesome. The last and final thing is believing you must first conquer self-doubt before you get started. And that is a huge, colossal mistake. I get asked all the time about how I deal with self-doubt. One of my good friends has a podcast, Jared, about starving the doubts. Another good friend of mine, Johnny Lee Phillips, who does Your Life Detective, he and I talked about self-doubt. And that's one of the topics of his show. And a lot of people talk about it because everyone has self-doubt. And they ask me how I deal with it. Well, unfortunately, my answer doesn't even solve the problem. And that's the crazy part about it. I don't believe anyone can ever conquer self-doubt. I don't know if that gets you going. Hopefully it does, and I'll explain here in a second. And hopefully it doesn't, slow you down. We always have a voice in the back of our head saying a couple things, or at least I do. And it's still there after almost 3 years of doing this. What if it doesn't work out? Are you really as good as you think you are? Why would somebody listen to you? Or, even worse, this voice in the back of your head might be saying, and I'll tell you why these are even worse. It might say, well, now isn't the best time to launch. The conditions aren't right. You should wait. If you've ever heard those things, oh my gosh, good news is you're probably onto something big. But if you've ever heard those words come out of your mouth or pop up between your ears, you are doing something worth doing. I'll start with that. You're doing something worth doing. But here's why those other things are even worse. If you're looking for the best time to launch your product, or things just aren't quite right, you should wait. They're not telling you no. They're not saying don't do it. It'd be very easy if the voice in your head just said don't do it. You'd be like, no, I'm going to do it. But if they said, well, yeah, now it's not the best time, and you start thinking, well, maybe there is a better time. Maybe you're right. This isn't the best time. And that's the devastating part, because you're going to get caught in this cycle of looking for the best time, or you're going to try to make the conditions right. When I was talking to Chris Cerrone a few weeks ago, I said, Chris, I wanted to start this course in July, but I had this voice in my head saying, July is an awful time to launch a course. It's summer break, it's blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Eller, you have to do it. So I set a date, I told the world, and I've obligated myself to keep my own word. That's a good way to get around it. But, man, sometimes the voice in my head is one of my worst enemies, and you have to ignore it. And I really don't think that you can completely conquer self-doubt, but I see a lot of people who want to conquer it before they start moving at all. If you can't conquer it, you got to get used to it. And it's not like you're putting up the white flag, or you're just dealing with or some sort of compromise. But I think it was George Carlin, famous comedian, did stand-up comedy for 50, 60 years. I might have the person wrong, but the story's the same. Before he performed, every single time before he went on stage, he would throw up. He had enough gut-wrenching self-doubt about being funny and pleasing the audience that he would throw up before every single performance. If this master of comedy has self-doubt after that long of years of affirmation, you and I are going to have it if we've been doing this for 2 months or 2 years. I can guarantee you. So there's good and bad news here. The bad news is you'll never escape the voices in your head questioning you, or you'll never fully destroy your self-doubt. Kind of sucks. I wish you could. I wish I had that answer. I'd probably be the richest man in the world if I could teach you how to completely eliminate and destroy self-doubt. But you can't. The good news is, the more you act in spite of your fear, the easier it gets to ignore the voices in your head and do awesome stuff. To do great things. The more you act in spite of it, the easier it gets. I was telling somebody the other day, it's kind of like if you had a tiny pebble in your shoe, and we'd call your shoe your life, and this pebble, self-doubt and fear. At first, it'd be very uncomfortable to walk with this pebble in your shoe, but eventually you'd get used to it, you'd develop a resistance to it, you'd have a callus, and all of a sudden you could run a marathon with this pebble in your shoe, and it wouldn't affect you because you've gotten used to it. And the same thing applies to you and acting in spite of your fear. At first, it's this big loud voice that's saying, now's not the right time. Why should someone listen to you? Whatever. But if you can get used to acting and ignoring that, it'll just kind of become this annoying little pebble in your shoe that you've built up a resistance to. So these are the 7 most common mistakes I see new entrepreneurs making. I made every single one of them myself. And whether you're looking to increase your sales or move from a part-time blogger to online business owner, you will most likely pass through each one of these areas at least once if you have not already. If you are ready to take the next step, but you are not sure, or make sure, sorry, I kind of spaced out there staring at my screen. If you are ready to take the next step, make sure you're not trying to do it by yourself. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I have 2 mastermind groups. Meet Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m. And I'm starting a local meetup group. If you're here in the Round Rock, Texas area, the La Madeline, 8 a.m. by the Outlet Mall. It's not as ghetto as it sounds, I promise. But this constant connection, getting this feedback, meeting with other people. Don't try to do everything on your own. And remember, nothing great has ever been achieved by a single person acting alone. When you have questions, ask somebody for help. Get help. When you're ready to take a serious action, build a platform for your message and share it with the world. Go to empoweredpodcast.com/expertise. It's the same link if you go to ellerywells.com/expertise. Enroll in my course. It starts on July the 1st. It's a Tuesday. It'll be that evening. Enroll in my course, and I will give you a 100% money-back guarantee that if you don't feel 100% prepared and equipped to start your online business after taking this course, I'll give you your money back. Because I want to give you every single thing that I have learned over the last 2.5 years. Condense that into something that you can, avoid all of the mistakes and pitfalls that I made, and show you how to put yourself in the driver's seat, take back control, and really, start making money on the side, or eventually leave your corporate job and do something awesome. Because I believe that you have a message, and I believe the world needs to hear that message. And when you are ready to do that, it may not be today. You might not be in this first class. You might not be in the second class. It might be the third or fourth class that I do. But I know you need to share your message with the world, and I want to help you do that. So, what did I miss? What kind of struggles have you had along your way of going, through your entrepreneurial journey when you're trying to take your success to the next level? What did I miss? Let me just recap those for you. The very first one that we talked about is not having much of an infrastructure. The second was expectations of automatic expertise. The third one is assuming that all of your social media skills and selling skills and all of those things are the same and will just make a direct translation over. The fourth one is worrying about not hitting your stride. Number 5 was forgetting to be yourself. The sixth one was no defined mission. And the last one that we just did was believing that you first must conquer self-doubt. What else have you gone through that I have missed? Head over to empoweredpodcast.com/37. Tell me there. Also, don't forget to share this podcast on social media and tag me to enter to win a copy of Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. This is another fantastic episode of the Empowered Podcast. Hopefully you liked the episode sans or without music and very minimal editing, all of my flaws and everything else thrown in there. empoweredpodcast.com/37. Connect with me there. Let me know, some of the things that you've done to really boost your confidence when building your small business. This is another episode. My name is Ellery Wells. I'll see you next time.